She stood barefoot in the snow, 19 years old, and sold like a secret no one wanted to keep. He was a single father, broken in quiet ways, with nothing left but a good heart and $147 in his wallet. When their lives collided in the cold, neither of them could have known they were each other's last chance and greatest miracle. Before we begin this extraordinary journey of love, survival, and redemption, if stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to subscribe. It's one simple act of kindness that helps these powerful voices reach others who need them most. Now let me tell you what really happened. The pine trees whispered in the frigid wind, their tall shadows flickering across the frozen dirt road like ghosts of regret. Caleb Granger tightened his grip on the steering wheel of his dented Chevy truck as the narrow trail led him deeper into the Montana backwoods. He hadn't meant to take this road. He hadn't even meant to stop in this part of the state. But the sign scribbled in red spray paint, "Live auction, 3 p.m., cash only," had pulled at something in him he didn't understand, something old, something raw. He had $147 in his wallet. That was all. Enough for gas to get home, maybe a bit of food for his daughter Lucy, and the inhaler refill she'd need next week. But here he was, burning it away on a detour into nowhere. The clearing appeared without warning, half a dozen trucks parked haphazardly around a crude bonfire. Men with unshaved faces and hollow eyes gathered near a makeshift wooden platform nailed together from splintered pallets. No one smiled. The air smelled of gasoline, cheap whiskey, and something darker Caleb didn't want to name. A tall man in a tattered trench coat stood on the platform, his voice gravel and smoke. 19. Healthy enough. Works. Don't eat much. The girl was pushed forward like livestock. Caleb's breath caught. She was barefoot in the snow. Her long dark hair hung in tangles past her shoulders, and her jeans were torn at the knees. But it wasn't her appearance that struck him. It was her eyes. Hollow. Guarded. Like she had already accepted that no one would save her, and that hope was something for other people. "This ain't a charity," the man barked as the crowd murmured. "You want to take her home, you pay. Or walk." Someone snorted. "Looks like she's already been through hell. Ain't no man here dumb enough to waste a dime." The girl flinched at the sound but didn't cry. Caleb couldn't look away. He thought of Lucy. He thought of how small she'd looked, curled on the couch last winter, blue-lipped and wheezing before the ambulance came. He thought of what it meant to be helpless. "I'll take her," he said. His own voice startled him. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The auctioneer squinted at him. "You serious old man." Caleb stepped forward, pulling his wallet from his jacket pocket. "I've got $147. "Cash?" The man spat to the side. "You're short." Caleb said nothing, just held the bills out. After a long pause, the man shrugged. "Fine. She's yours. No refunds." The girl looked up then. Slowly, her lips parted slightly as if forming a question too dangerous to speak aloud. Caleb didn't offer a hand. He just nodded toward the truck. She followed. The drive back was silent. Caleb didn't speak, and the girl didn't ask questions. She sat hunched in the passenger seat, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her fingers blue at the tips. Caleb turned up the heat. She didn't react. He glanced sideways. "Name." Her voice was hoarse brittle. "Callie." "I'm Caleb. My daughter's name is Lucy. She's 7. Callie said nothing. Caleb pulled into the driveway of his small cabin tucked beneath the pines. Smoke curled from the chimney. The porch light flickered softly in the dusk. Inside, the warmth wrapped around them like a blanket. A few framed photos hung on the wall. Lucy's handprint in kindergarten paint. A wedding photo yellowed with time. "I'll get you a blanket," Caleb said, disappearing into the hallway. Callie stood in the entryway, not moving. Her eyes scanned the room like it might disappear if she blinked too long. he returned, holding out a faded quilt. She took it but didn't wrap it around herself. Instead, she stared at him. Why, she whispered. Caleb didn't pretend not to understand. Because no one else was going to, he said. And because I couldn't leave you there, he didn't wait for thanks, just gestured toward the couch. You can sleep here tonight. Callie lowered herself onto the cushions, slowly, the blanket still folded in her lap. Caleb turned off the hallway light, leaving only the soft glow of a lamp by the fireplace. Before he turned away, he heard her voice again, quiet, nearly inaudible. No one's ever done something like that. Not for me. Caleb paused. Then get some rest, Callie. You're safe now. He walked away, but neither of them slept much that night. The sun cracked over the edge of the pine-covered ridge, brushing the cabin roof with thin light that barely cut through the frost clinging to the window panes. Inside the living room sat in a hushed stillness, broken only by the faint ticking of an old wall clock and the soft wheeze of the heater. Callie sat upright on the couch, the faded quilt still folded neatly in her lap. She hadn't slept. Not really. Her body had rested, but her mind had stayed alert, a coiled spring. She didn't know how to turn it off. She hadn't felt safe in years, and even now in this warm space that smelled faintly of wood smoke and cinnamon, part of her still waited for someone to yell. Or hit. Or worse. The house was too quiet. She rose slowly, feet touching the wooden floor with hesitation. There were no bags to unpack, no toothbrush, no change of clothes, just the clothes she had worn in the snow and the faint ache in her ribs that had never quite gone away. From the small hallway, a soft, shuffling sound approached. Caleb appeared, hair messy, flannel shirt hanging open over a white t-shirt. He paused when he saw her. You didn't sleep, he said gently. Callie shook her head. He nodded once, not pushing. Coffee. She hesitated, then gave a small nod. In the kitchen, Caleb moved with practiced quiet. He poured water into a dented kettle, spooned grounds into an old drip pot. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, just uncertain. I've got some oatmeal, too, he offered. You don't have to, she said. I know. He poured the coffee anyway. Callie wrapped the quilt around her shoulders and stepped into the kitchen, eyeing the worn table with its chipped edge and mismatched chairs. It felt real, like a life someone had tried to build, not just survive. She noticed a photo pinned to the refrigerator, a little girl with wild curls and missing teeth, grinning as she held a jar of fireflies. Lucy, she asked. Caleb looked up, surprised. Yeah, that was last summer. She thought she could train them like pets. A faint smile touched Callie's lips, vanishing almost instantly. Smiling had always been dangerous. Smiling meant you were relaxed, and relaxing meant getting hurt. She at school, she asked. Yep. Bus comes at 7. She wanted to meet you, but I told her to give you space. He paused. She's curious. Smart, too. Callie didn't reply. She stared at the steam rising from the coffee mug Caleb slid toward her. He watched her for a moment longer, then said, You don't owe me anything. She stiffened. He raised a hand, calm. I know what this might look like. But that's not what this is. I didn't bring you here for any reason but one: you needed help. That's it. Callie's eyes narrowed, testing him. You don't even know me. No, Caleb said softly. But I've seen someone hurting, and that's enough. A silence passed between them, thick and fragile. Then Callie did something she hadn't done in a long time. She sat. Really sat. Not poised to run. Not on edge. Just sat. Caleb turned back to the stove, letting her be. That afternoon, the cabin settled into a rhythm. Callie remained quiet, moving through the space like a shadow. But she swept the living room without being asked. She fed the dog an old golden retriever named Boomer, who instantly claimed her as his. She even found a box of girls' clothes in a plastic bin marked giveaway in the laundry room and borrowed a sweatshirt that smelled faintly of vanilla and smoke. When the school bus pulled up, Callie tensed. A moment later, the front door burst open and Lucy ran inside, her backpack bouncing behind her. She was small and lively, with eyes full of curiosity. She froze when she saw Callie. "Hi," Lucy said. Callie gave a nod. "I'm Lucy. Are you gonna stay here now?" Caleb entered behind her. "Lucy, remember what we talked about? Kindness first." Lucy nodded solemnly, then turned back. "Do you like peanut butter? 'Cause I got some." Callie blinked, caught off guard. Yeah. "Sure." Lucy smiled. "Then we can be friends, just like that." Later, as the sky darkened and snow began to fall softly outside, Callie stood near the window watching the forest. "Your neighbors," she said suddenly. "They gonna have a problem?" Caleb sat nearby, oiling a broken hinge from a kitchen drawer. "Probably. Small towns don't move fast with forgiveness or understanding." Callie's voice was flat. "They think you bought me." He looked at her. "I did." She turned to him, startled. "But not like they think," he added. "I bought your freedom. You don't owe me anything, Callie. Not your past, not your trust. Just take your time." Her voice dropped. "I don't have anything to give." He stood, walking slowly over, and handed her the fixed hinge. "Then we'll start with this. Help me fix a drawer." She stared at the hinge, then slowly, so slowly took it from his hand. It was nothing. And yet it was the beginning of everything. The snow had stopped, but the cold hung thick over the town of Marlow Ridge, like an old coat no one dared throw away. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, or thought they did. Where the same pews were warmed every Sunday, the same mugs filled at the same diner, and where nothing, absolutely nothing, went unnoticed. Especially not a 19-year-old girl with haunted eyes moving into Caleb Granger's cabin. The whispers began within 2 days. At the feed store, I heard he picked her up at some backwoods auction. Paid cash. Don't surprise me none. That man's been off since his wife died. At the post office, she ain't right, that girl. Doesn't even look folks in the eye. He's got a little girl in that house. What's he thinking? The rumors snaked their way through fences and phone lines until they landed squarely in the kitchen of Ruth Delaney, Caleb's closest neighbor, Sunday school teacher, and part-time town moral compass. She had known Caleb's late wife, Emma, had cried real tears at the funeral, had baked him pies that first winter when Lucy was just a baby. So when she heard the gossip, she didn't wait. She showed up on his porch the next morning with a pie and eyes sharp as razors. Caleb opened the door, still in his work boots, saw the look on Ruth's face, and sighed. "Morning, Ruth. You always were a good man," she said, stepping inside without waiting. "But even good men make poor decisions when grief blinds them." Caleb closed the door behind her. "Would you like some coffee?" She set the pie down. "No, thank you. I didn't come to be coddled." From the hallway, Callie appeared just barely. She caught Ruth's eyes, hesitated. "Is that her?" Ruth said, not whispering. Caleb said gently, "This is Ms. Delaney. She's a neighbor." Callie gave a quick nod, then disappeared back into the hallway. Ruth folded her arms. "She looks like she's been through war." "She has," Caleb replied calmly. "You've got a child in this house," Ruth said. "You bringing someone like her in, someone with no history, no family. It's reckless, Caleb." He met her gaze. "Lucy loves her. Children don't know better." "She does," he said. "She sees clearer than most adults in this town." Ruth exhaled sharply. "There are things people are saying." "I know." He poured himself a mug of coffee and leaned against the counter. "But I didn't ask permission. I did what I believed was right. and I'll do it again." For a moment, Ruth's stern expression wavered. She looked toward the hallway where Callie had vanished. "I hope you're right," she said, "because the whole town's watching. At school, Lucy felt it too. She was used to being the quiet kid, the one with peanut butter sandwiches and hand-me-down jackets. But now people stared when she passed. Girls giggled and whispered behind cupped hands. A boy leaned over his lunch tray and said, "Hey, Lucy, is it true your dad bought a girlfriend off Craigslist?" She didn't understand most of the joke, but she knew it was meant to hurt. That afternoon, when she got off the bus, she ran straight inside past Boomer and through the kitchen into Caleb's arms. "They're being mean," she said into his chest. "They said things about her." Callie stood frozen near the stove, a dish towel in her hands. Caleb stroked Lucy's hair. "What things?" "That she's dangerous. That you paid for her. Like she's not even a real person." He looked up, his eyes meeting Callie's. For the first time since she arrived, she looked ashamed. He turned to Lucy. "You know why we help people, honey, because it's right." He nodded. "Even when no one else will. Even when they lie about it." Lucy pulled away, sniffling. Then she looked at Callie, hesitating. "You're not going to leave, are you?" Callie shook her head slowly. "Not unless you ask me to." Lucy's small hand reached out and took hers. "I don't want you to go." Later that night, Caleb found Callie outside, sitting on the porch steps, wrapped in the old quilt, her breath fogging in the moonlight. Snow dusted the pine branches like powdered sugar. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. "I'm used to being talked about, but not like this. Not by people who matter. They don't matter." She looked at him. "They matter to you." He sat down beside her. "They're not the ones raising my daughter." A long silence passed. Then she said, "I didn't ask you to save me." "I know, but you did." He turned to her. "And I'll do it again tomorrow if I have to." She swallowed. "Do you ever regret it?" Caleb leaned back on his elbows. "No, but I do regret not getting there sooner." Callie looked away, her voice nearly a whisper. "They tied my hands when they pushed me on that platform." Caleb didn't move. She continued. "They said no one would want me. That even if I ran, no one would care." His jaw clenched. "They were almost right," she said. He turned to her, then voice steady. "Almost doesn't count, Callie." She blinked, and a single tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. For the first time, she let it fall. The morning began with silence and frost. The kind of frost that etched delicate patterns on the window panes, like nature's handwriting, and the kind of silence that only happens after a long, honest cry. Callie had not spoken much since the night on the porch. She moved with a quiet certainty, still wary, but no longer ghost-like. Something had shifted, not in how the town saw her, not yet, but in how she saw herself. She was still broken, but not invisible. Inside the cabin, the wood stove crackled softly. Caleb was bent over a pile of bills at the kitchen table, rubbing the back of his neck with a worried hand. Across from him, Callie stirred a pot of oatmeal with careful focus. Boomer lay near her feet, snoring gently. Lucy sat at the counter, coloring a picture of a treehouse tongue, peeking out in concentration. "How's the masterpiece coming?" Callie asked. Lucy grinned. "It's going to have rope ladders and snacks hidden in the floorboards for emergencies." "Sounds like a survivalist's dream," Callie said, a glimmer of amusement in her voice. "Daddy says you know all about survival stuff," Lucy added. "Is it true?" Caleb looked up, concerned, but Callie only shrugged. "I guess you could say that. Will you teach me?" Callie hesitated, eyes flicking to Caleb. He met her gaze and nodded once. It was enough. "Sure, kid," Callie said softly. "We'll start with knots." That afternoon, Callie led Lucy out to the shed behind the cabin. The air was crisp, but the sun had warmed enough to soften the snow into a crunchy blanket. She pulled out a coil of old rope, rough but usable. "Knots?" Lucy asked eagerly. "Knots," Callie confirmed. "The first rule is this: a knot isn't just for holding things. It's for letting go when you need to." Lucy tilted her head. "That doesn't make sense." "It will," Callie said, smiling faintly. They sat on a log leg swinging in rhythm. Callie showed her the square knot, the bowline, and the slip knot. Lucy fumbled, grew frustrated, then giggled when Callie demonstrated using her own bootlaces. "You're good at this," Lucy said suddenly. Callie blinked. At tying knots, no. At being nice. It was such a simple statement, and it hit Callie harder than she expected. Kindness was a muscle she hadn't used in years, one she feared had atrophied. But here was this 7-year-old girl offering a verdict without judgment, only observation. "Thanks," Callie said, brushing her hands on her jeans. "You're not so bad yourself." That evening, Caleb watched from the porch as Callie lit the outdoor fire pit and roasted marshmallows with Lucy. Their laughter rose above the crackle of flames, warm and real. It had been months, years, maybe, since he'd heard his daughter laugh like that. But just as his heart lifted, he noticed the way Callie moved. Careful, like someone who still expected the world to snap back at her. He joined them with 2 mugs of cocoa. "This for me?" Callie asked, surprised. "Unless you think Lucy needs both." "I definitely do," Lucy grinned, grabbing hers. They sat for a while in contented quiet, the fire crackling stars stretching across the ink-blue sky. "You're good with her," Caleb said quietly. Callie shrugged. "She's easy to love." "You don't think you are?" Callie didn't answer. She looked into the flames. "I wasn't raised to be. I was raised to survive." Caleb set his mug down. "There's a difference, I know," she whispered. "That's why it feels so strange. To just be here. Warm. Safe. Not waiting for something to go wrong." He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Callie turned to him. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you really take me home?" He met her eyes. "Because I looked at you, and I saw someone who'd already been failed too many times. And because Lucy doesn't need a perfect home. She needs a good one. One that makes room for people trying." Her throat tightened. "I'm not good at being someone's anything." "You're here," he said. "That's enough for now." The next morning, the frost returned thicker this time. Callie woke to the sound of coughing wet sharp and coming from Lucy's room. She bolted upright, heart pounding. In seconds, she was in Lucy's doorway. Caleb was already there, holding his daughter upright, as she gasped, face pale and sweaty. "Inhaler's empty," he said, panic flickering under his calm. "I was going to refill it tomorrow. I didn't think." Callie cut him off. "We need heat, steam, now." She ran to the kitchen, boiled water, grabbed towels. She'd done this before with strangers, with cousins, with herself. She filled a bowl with scalding water, covered Lucy's head with a towel, and held her steady while Caleb tried not to crumble. "Slow breaths, sweetheart," Callie whispered. "You're okay. You're safe. You're strong." Lucy wheezed, then inhaled deeper and deeper. Caleb's eyes brimmed. "How did you know what to do?" Callie didn't look up. Because once no one did, and finally Lucy's breathing slowed. Her body sagged into her father's arms. Callie sat back, hands shaking. Caleb looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "You saved her." Callie stared at her hands. "She saved me first." Winter in Marlow Ridge had a way of settling into the bones, quiet, steady, inescapable. But inside the cabin on the hill, something warmer was taking hold. Callie stood in the kitchen early that morning, humming faintly, as she cracked eggs into a cast-iron skillet. The tune was unrecognizable, off-key, and tentative, but it filled the room like sunlight after a storm. Boomer thumped his tail against the floor, following her every movement with loyal eyes. Lucy, wrapped in a flannel blanket, sat at the table, drawing stick figures, holding hands under a big yellow sun. "Is that me?" Callie asked, nodding toward the page. Lucy nodded. "That's you, and that's Daddy, and that's me. And we're making pancakes." Callie smiled, a real one this time. "I can't draw, but I can flip a pancake or two." "You're really good at mornings," Lucy declared. "Mom used to be too. Daddy says you never forget a good morning." Callie's smile faltered for the briefest second, but she caught herself, caught the flicker of pain, and buried it quickly the way she'd learned to do with all her softer pieces. By noon, the house smelled of cinnamon syrup and something fragile but real belonging. Caleb came home early from hauling lumber and paused at the door, taking in the scene, his daughter in pajamas, Callie singing a little louder now, and Boomer asleep with his paws in the air. "You redecorate while I was gone?" he asked with a smirk. "Just rebranded," Callie replied, flipping a pancake with flair. "I like it." He meant more than the pancakes. She knew it. That afternoon, while Callie folded laundry and Lucy played outside with snow-packed boots and a sled that didn't slide quite right, Caleb went to check the mailbox at the bottom of the long gravel drive. It was mostly junk flyers, a bill or two, but among them was a plain envelope with no return address. He opened it on the walk back. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper, creased hard, written in ink so heavy it nearly tore the page. "You can take a stray off the street, but it's still a stray. Some animals don't belong in homes. She's not one of us. The town's watching. So are we. No signature. No mercy." He stood still for a moment, letting the cold bite into him. Then, without a word, he folded the letter, slid it into his back pocket, and continued up the hill. That night, Caleb didn't mention the letter. He didn't want to frighten Lucy or stir ghosts in Callie she hadn't yet named. Instead, quietly reinforced the locks on the windows and made sure the motion lights around the porch were working. But Callie noticed the way he kept glancing at the driveway, how his jaw stayed tighter than usual. After Lucy was tucked into bed with her usual nighttime ritual, 2 hugs, 3 kisses, one whispered, "Wish Callie found Caleb outside on the porch, hands deep in his coat pockets, staring at nothing." "You got mail?" she asked. His breath clouded the air. "Yeah." "Was it about me?" He turned, didn't lie. "Yeah." She nodded. "They're not wrong." He frowned. "Don't say that. It's what I've been told my whole life." "They're wrong," he said firmly. Callie leaned against the railing, arms crossed. "I used to believe people like them had power, that their words meant something, that they were right about me. They're scared of what they don't understand," he said. She gave a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah, I'm used to that." "Don't be," Caleb said. "This place, this home, it's not built on fear." She looked at him then, really looked. "You built this place with someone else. Your wife." He nodded slowly. "Emma, we bought the land after Lucy was born. She wanted a quiet life. Garden, chickens. She said the city didn't have enough stars." Callie said nothing, letting the silence settle between them. "She passed 5 years ago," Caleb said softly. "Car crash. Ice storm. I wasn't with her." The pain in his voice was steady, not sharp anymore, like a wound that had scarred, but never really healed. "I'm sorry," Callie whispered. "She would have liked you," he said. Callie blinked, surprised. Why she had a radar for people who looked like they'd been through hell and kept going anyway. Callie didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. After a moment, Caleb reached into his coat and handed her the letter. She unfolded it, read the words, and then did something she didn't expect. She tore it in half, then in quarters. then into shreds so small the ink disappeared altogether. "I'm not leaving," she said. "I didn't ask you to. I'm just saying it out loud. For me." Later that night, as she lay in the dark on the couch, Callie thought about roots. How they didn't ask the soil's permission to grow. How they just reached regardless of what was above the surface. She wasn't sure yet if she could stay, but she was starting to hope. And that was new. The snow began as a whisper, just faint flakes drifting from the sky like an afterthought. Harmless, almost pretty. Callie stood by the front window with a mug of tea in her hands, watching the white dust swirl around the porch steps. She had grown up dreading winters. Cold meant hunger. Cold meant bruises. Cold meant silence that could break your bones. But this cabin, this porch, this life, it didn't feel the same. Not quite. Lucy sat cross-legged on the living room floor, building a castle from old soup cans and shoeboxes. Caleb was out helping the town plow a side road near Miller's Creek. He'd left at dawn, bundled in layers, and carrying a thermos of strong black coffee. The radio murmured in the background, casual at first. Winter advisory in effect. Conditions worsening faster than expected. Whiteout possible. By noon, the world outside had vanished. The trees were ghosts. The road was gone. The snow no longer whispered. It howled. Callie turned up the heat and stuffed blankets under the window panes. Lucy didn't complain about missing school. She read books aloud in a quiet corner, her voice soft but steady. The air in the cabin was warm, but Callie couldn't shake the unease. A thread of fear coiled in her chest. She checked the clock again. Caleb should have been home hours ago. At 3:47 p.m., the knock on the door came hard, fast, panicked. Callie yanked it open. It was Tom Fletcher, the town's only mailman and part-time volunteer firefighter. His beard was crusted with ice, his hat askew. "Caleb?" he gasped. "He's hurt. Trapped under a downed tree. I found him near the creek. We can't get a vehicle through." Callie's mind went razor sharp. Where is he exactly? About a mile down from the old hunting trail, past the bend near Carter's Bluff. "Can you take Lucy?" Tom blinked. "What, I'm going." "You can't. I have to." Callie turned to Lucy, who had gone pale. She dropped to one knee and took her hands. "You're safe, okay? Boomer will stay with you. You listen to Mr. Fletcher. You do not open the door unless it's me." Lucy nodded, her eyes wide and wet. "Will Daddy be okay?" Callie's throat tightened. "Yes, because I'm going to get him." She was already out the door. The storm didn't care that she couldn't see. It didn't care about breath or bone or blood. It screamed and clawed, whipping her coat against her legs, stealing warmth from every breath. But Callie moved forward, each step a defiance. The hunting trail was nearly erased. Only the tops of fence posts and tree stumps guided her. Her boots sank deep, her gloves stiff with ice. But she kept going. One thought pulsing in her mind like a heartbeat. I can't lose him. I can't lose them. Not after everything. After 20 minutes, she spotted the shape half buried under snow, unmoving. Caleb. A tree trunk had fallen across his left leg, pinning him. His face was pale lips, blue at the corners. Caleb. She dropped to her knees, brushing snow from his chest. His eyelids fluttered. Callie. "Hey," she said, her voice breaking. "You really picked a bad day to play lumberjack." He tried to smile. "Didn't mean to worry you. You didn't." She lied, brushing snow from his brow. "You just gave me an excuse to do something crazy." She checked his breathing, shallow but steady. His leg was crushed under the trunk, but not completely trapped. If she could get leverage, maybe she could. She looked around, spotted a broken branch long enough to use as a lever. "Hold on," she whispered. "Just hold on." The first time she tried, the branch snapped. The second time, the trunk shifted but didn't lift. The third time, she screamed a full-throated sound from deep inside her soul, and the weight moved just enough. Caleb groaned as she pulled him free, dragging him across the snow inch by inch. She didn't know how long it took. Her arms ached, her lungs burned, her cheeks were raw. But somehow, she got him under the cover of the trees and wrapped him in the emergency blanket she kept tied around her waist. Then she laid beside him, wrapped her arms around his shaking body, and whispered, over and over, "You're okay. You're safe. I've got you now." They found them 2 hours later, half frozen, but alive. Tom had returned with a snowmobile carrying Lucy and a sheriff's deputy. The search had already begun when a neighbor found Caleb's thermos near the creek and called it in. At the clinic, while nurses worked on Caleb's leg, the sheriff asked Callie to sit. "You did something not many people would have," he said. "That storm could have taken you both." Callie nodded, exhausted. The sheriff glanced at his notebook. "You ever done rescue before?" "No," she said. "Just survival." He paused. "Looks like that skill saved 2 lives today." Callie looked through the glass window at the hospital bed, where Caleb now slept, his hand loosely curled on his chest. Her voice was quiet but certain. "Maybe it's time I stop surviving and start living." The snow hadn't melted, but something else had begun to thaw. Word of what happened spread faster than the storm that caused it. By morning, every corner of Marlow Ridge knew the story: Caleb Granger pinned under a fallen tree during the blizzard. The girl he'd taken in marched out alone in a whiteout and dragged him home alive. No one could say a word against her now, but that didn't stop them from trying. At Sally's diner, the usual voices murmured above mugs of burnt coffee. I heard she used a branch as a lever, pulled him out with just her own strength. Still doesn't mean she belongs here. Maybe not. But she saved him. And the girl, too. Can't say she didn't. And in that moment, the town did what towns do: it reconsidered. Slowly. Uneasily. Callie didn't care about any of it. She sat by Caleb's hospital bed, eyes fixed on the slow rise and fall of his chest beneath the sheets. The fluorescent lights made everything feel sterile, suspended. Caleb's leg was in a cast, from knee to ankle, and his ribs were bruised badly. But he would heal. And he was alive. That's what mattered. Lucy had curled up in the chair across from her, clutching Boomer's leash, even though the dog had been left at home. Her face was pale quiet. Callie reached over and took her hand. "You okay, kid?" Lucy nodded. I prayed. Callie's throat tightened. "I think someone listened. Was it hard?" Lucy asked. Getting him out, Callie smiled faintly. "Hardest thing I've ever done." Lucy blinked. "But you did it." "I had to." "No one else would have," Lucy whispered. "That's what I was scared of." Callie looked at her for a long time, then leaned forward and kissed the top of her head. When Caleb woke, it was slow groggy. His voice was hoarse, but the first word he said was her name. "Callie." She rose from the chair and took his hand. "Hey, you scared me." "You're not easy to scare," he rasped. "Well," she said with a smile, "you've got your moments." He tried to sit up and winced. "Lucy, she's fine. She didn't leave your side till 10 minutes ago." He exhaled. "You saved me." Callie didn't answer. He turned his head. "Look at me, Callie." She did. "You saved me." She sat down again, quietly, slowly. "I didn't think. I just knew you'd do the same." He nodded. "Always." The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was full. Full of things they weren't ready to say. Full of the truth they were only just beginning to understand. 2 days later, the doctor released Caleb to recover at home. Callie pushed the wheelchair through the front door of the cabin, Lucy bouncing beside her, chattering about soup and movies, and how she was going to make Daddy stay in bed for 100 years. Callie helped Caleb onto the couch and covered him with a quilt. He relaxed into it with a sigh. "I'm not used to being the one on the couch," he said. Callie arched an eyebrow. "You'll manage." That night, a knock came at the door. Callie opened it to find Ruth Delaney, her eyes red, her hands clutching a foil-covered casserole. "Chicken and rice," she said, clearing her throat. "Figured you all could use something warm." Callie blinked, stunned. "Thank you." Ruth hesitated. "And, Callie, I owe you an apology." Callie shifted. "You don't have to." "I do," Ruth said. "When you came here, I judged you. I listened to the town instead of the truth. But I saw what you did. I saw the kind of woman you are. And I'm sorry." Callie's voice was quiet. "Thank you, Ms. Delaney. You call me Ruth now." By the end of the week, casseroles and handwritten notes had started showing up on the porch. Lucy came home from school with drawings her classmates had made. One of them showed Callie in a red cape, dragging a smiling Caleb from a snowstorm like a superhero. Callie laughed when she saw it. Then she cried. Not because it was funny, but because for the first time in her life, someone had drawn her as a hero. That Sunday, Caleb insisted on going to church. Callie wasn't sure. She didn't like crowds, and she sure didn't like being looked at. "They'll stare," she said. "Let them," Caleb replied. "You earned it." He hobbled through the doors of Marlow Ridge Church, with Callie on one side and Lucy on the other. Conversations quieted, heads turned, and then something unexpected happened. People stood. Not everyone, but enough. A line of quiet respect, a gesture that meant something in this town. Callie gripped Caleb's arm a little tighter. He looked down at her, smiling. "Guess the town saw you after all." That evening, back at the cabin, Lucy climbed into Callie's lap with her bedtime book cuddled close under a patchwork quilt. "Can I call you something?" she asked. "Of course. Can I call you mine?" Callie didn't answer right away. But when she did, her voice shook. "Yes, sweet girl. You can." It had been a good morning, the kind where sunlight spilled across the wooden floor. Boomer snored gently by the hearth, and Lucy sat in the center of the room, braiding yarn into bracelets, like she was weaving magic. Caleb, still in recovery, rested on the couch, with his cast propped up, grumbling about being useless. And Callie, apron dusted with flour, was baking muffins. The cabin breathed like a home. Then came the knock. Not hurried, not hesitant. 3 firm raps. Boomer sat up alert. Callie wiped her hands on a towel and opened the door. The man on the porch was tall, lean, his eyes sharp with calculation, and something colder ownership. His coat was too clean for someone local, his boots polished. And beside him stood a woman thinner than she should be, smoking a cigarette like it was air. Callie froze. The woman exhaled. "Hi, sweetheart." She couldn't breathe. "Mom," she whispered. The man took a step forward. "We're here for our daughter." Caleb appeared in the doorway behind her, his voice steel. "I think you should leave." "We're her legal guardians," the man said. "She's underage. You've been harboring her." "She's 19, Caleb replied, "and free. She has no papers," the woman cut in. "No ID, no birth certificate. And we've got statements. People who saw you pay for her. That's trafficking, friend. We could make things real messy." Callie couldn't move. Her feet felt nailed to the porch. The man continued, "Or we can make this easy. You pay us what she owes, we walk. No drama." Caleb stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "You don't speak for her anymore," he said. "You gave that right up the day you put her on a wooden crate with a price tag. You don't want a legal fight," the man warned. "People like you don't win those." "People like me?" Caleb asked, voice quiet. "You mean men who stand between monsters and the people they prey on?" The man's jaw twitched. "You'll hear from a lawyer." Caleb stepped forward, one crutch, steady eyes hard as stone. "You'll never come near her again." The man hesitated. Then he smirked. "We'll see what the courts say." He turned and walked away. The woman hesitated a second longer, her eyes flickering with something almost like shame, then followed. Inside, Callie stood like stone, hands clenched, face pale. "I'm sorry," Caleb said gently. "I didn't want. They're going to drag it all up," she said. "Everything." "Then we fight," he said simply. Callie looked at him, eyes full of disbelief. "You do that, I already am." The next few days passed in a blur of paperwork, legal consultations, and phone calls. Caleb called in a favor from a friend in Bozeman Grace Lowell, a seasoned family law attorney who'd once owed him her life in a forest fire rescue. She arrived with boots, still muddy from another case, and a no-nonsense attitude. "They have no birth records," she asked. Callie shook her head. "They never filed anything. I don't even know what year I was actually born. They just told people I was younger to keep control." Grace nodded. "It's ugly, but it's also beatable. And you have something more powerful than they do." Callie raised an eyebrow. "What truth? And people who will stand beside you." A hearing was scheduled. Emergency protection orders were filed. The town still buzzing from the storm, rescue rallied behind Callie in quiet but powerful ways. Ruth Delaney offered to testify. Lucy's teacher wrote a letter. Even Tom, the mailman, who had first delivered the news of Caleb's accident, submitted a signed statement describing Callie's actions in the blizzard. Still, Callie didn't sleep much. Each night she lay on the couch and stared at the ceiling, waiting for something to crash through the fragile peace she'd found. And each night, Caleb would pass by on his crutches, offer her a blanket, a smile, and a quiet reminder, "You're not alone anymore." The hearing took place in a small courthouse 2 towns over. The room was too cold, the walls too beige. Callie sat beside Grace, hands clammy, heart-hammering. Across the aisle, her biological parents whispered and glared, their lawyer a slick man with expensive shoes and empty eyes. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and a gaze like a lighthouse, called the room to order. Callie was sworn in. And then she spoke. She spoke of growing up in a house where hunger was routine, where pain was currency, and where names weren't used, only commands and slurs. She described being told she was worthless, being used as leverage for drug debts, and finally, the day she was put on a crate and told to smile while they auctioned her off. "I didn't run," she said, voice steady, "because I didn't believe there was anywhere better. I thought that was all there was. And then someone saw me." She turned toward Caleb. "He didn't ask where I came from. He didn't ask what I'd done. He just let me sit on a couch and feel human. He saved me, not with money, with dignity, and with his daughter, who showed me what love without conditions looks like." Her voice broke. "I don't want to be their daughter anymore. I want to be his." The courtroom was silent. Even the opposing lawyer looked shaken. The judge sat back, expression unreadable. Then she spoke. "I've seen many tragic stories, many terrible parents, but rarely have I seen a survivor stand with as much clarity and grace as you just did." She turned to Callie's parents. "You sold her. You surrendered your rights, not in law, but in action." She turned back to Callie. "You are free, and you are exactly where you belong." When they walked out of the courtroom, Caleb offered Callie his hand. She didn't take it. She wrapped her arms around him instead. Callie had never had a birthday before. Not a real one. Not one with candles or cards, or even the right date. Her biological parents used to forget what month she was born in. One year, her mother told a neighbor it was August. Another time, she said February. There was never cake, just silence. Or worse, a slammed door, an ashtray thrown too close, a reminder that her life had started as an inconvenience. But now, here she was, standing in the middle of Caleb Granger's kitchen, the room strung with yarn and construction paper banners that Lucy had worked on all week. One read in glitter glue and crooked letters, "Happy You Day, Callie." She laughed when she saw it, then cried. Just a little. Just enough. The day had begun with cinnamon rolls and hot coffee delivered by Lucy's with the seriousness of a royal butler. Callie had tried to protest. I didn't ask for any of this, but Lucy shushed her with a finger to the lips and whispered, "You didn't have to." Caleb, still moving slowly with his healing leg, had stayed up late the night before, baking a lemon cake from a recipe his late wife had once perfected. It was her favorite, he said, placing it on the table with quiet reverence. She'd want to share it. Callie nodded, the lump in her throat rising again. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he said gently. "Just let yourself have today." Around noon, neighbors began stopping by. Ruth Delaney brought fresh-cut flowers in a mason jar and a card with pressed leaves. Tom Fletcher delivered a small carved birdhouse, along with an awkward but heartfelt, "You earned this." Even the mailman's shy grandson came along with a folded drawing, Callie in a superhero cape standing beside Lucy and Caleb. "This is you," he said shyly, "because you save people." Callie knelt and hugged him. "Thank you. That might be the best thing anyone's ever given me." Later, they sat around the fire pit in the yard roasting marshmallows, even though it was still brisk out. Lucy wore a crown made of twigs and called herself the Birthday Fairy. Boomer chased sticks like a dog half his age. Caleb sat quietly beside Callie, his eyes content but watchful. She leaned toward him, voice low. "I keep expecting someone to wake me up. Tell me this isn't mine, that I've got to go back." He looked at her steady. "No one's sending you back. You're not just here, Callie. You belong here." She blinked fast. Then Lucy ran over holding a tiny box wrapped in newspaper and twine. "Open it." "It's from Daddy." Callie hesitated. Caleb nodded. "Go ahead." She unwrapped it slowly, careful with the paper. Inside was a simple wooden ring box, old, scratched at the corners. When she opened it, she gasped softly. A ring rested on the velvet. Not a diamond, not expensive, but meaningful. A slim band with a braided silver inlay and one small blue-green stone in the center, something between aquamarine and sky. It was Emma's, Caleb said quietly, but it never really felt like hers alone. She told me once if anything ever happened to her, and if I found someone who brought life back into this house, I'd know. Callie swallowed. "Are you?" "I'm not asking for anything right now," he said quickly. "Not marriage, not promises you're not ready for." He paused. "I'm asking you to stay, to keep choosing us, to let this house be your home." Callie held the ring in her palm. Then she slid it onto her right hand and smiled. "I already chose you," she whispered. That night, after Lucy had fallen asleep under a fort of blankets and books, Callie stood on the porch watching the stars. Caleb joined her, leaning on the rail beside her. She fell asleep mid-sentence. He chuckled. Said it was the best birthday she ever had, even though it wasn't hers. Callie laughed softly. "That sounds about right." They stood in silence for a moment. Then she said, "Today felt like something was being rewritten." He turned. "What do you mean?" She looked up at the stars, eyes reflecting their light. "For a long time I thought I was born broken. Like the day I came into this world, someone stamped me defective." She paused. "But today felt like a new start. Like I finally arrived." Caleb didn't say anything. He just reached over, took her hand, and squeezed it. And in the quiet of the Montana night wrapped in wood smoke and frost and something holy, Callie whispered something not meant for him, but for the girl she used to be. You made it. The wind carried smoke before the flames. By the time the sirens wailed through the valley, the ridge behind Marlow was already glowing orange against the darkening sky. A wildfire, fast and sudden, whipped up by dry brush and early spring wind, unexpected and utterly unforgiving. Caleb watched from the porch, his cast finally off, still limping slightly. Lucy clung to his side. Callie stood a few steps ahead, arms crossed, her eyes narrowed at the horizon. I know that look, Caleb said softly. She turned to him. You need to go. Pack what you can. Take Lucy. Head to the church. They're opening it for evac. You're coming with us. No, she said, already pulling on her boots. I know that ridge. I know those trails. They'll need help directing people out. Caleb stepped forward. Callie. She looked him dead in the eye. You told me I belong here, that this is my home. He froze. I protect what's mine now, too. By the time she reached the edge of the fire line, the volunteer brigade was already mobilizing. Men and women from the town, ranchers, teachers, shopkeepers. Some with hoses, some with shovels, some just ready to haul buckets of water. No one was a professional, but all of them were desperate to save what they loved. Callie fell in beside them, barking orders with surprising command. Cut a break here. Clear this brush. Someone hesitated. Who put you in charge? Anyone else know this ridge better? She snapped. Anyone else drag a man through 3 feet of snow on this same trail last month? That shut him up. They listened. The fire moved fast, too fast. One wrong gust, and a wall of flame turned toward the back side of the Granger property, where the fence line touched the base of the woods. Boomer was still there. Callie didn't think. She just ran. Smoke thickened the air, choking and sharp. Embers danced like fireflies turned violent. The old barn crackled nearby, the roof already sagging. She found Boomer cornered behind the shed, barking wildly. It's okay, she shouted, wrapping her jacket around his head, guiding him toward the field. The fence was partially collapsed. Flames inching toward the base. She could hear shouting, now Caleb's voice. Callie. She turned just in time to see him limping toward her face, wild with panic. I told you to go, she screamed. He didn't stop. You think I'd leave you? They met at the edge of the burning field, Boomer between them. And then the propane tank in the shed exploded. The shockwave knocked them flat, a ringing silence falling over everything. When Callie opened her eyes, she saw Caleb cradling Boomer's body, blood on his cheek, but conscious. You okay? She gasped. Ask me again later, he muttered. They crawled out through the ditch, coughing, burned but alive. The next moments were a blur, sirens, water hoses, someone pulling them up into the back of a truck. The church bell rang midnight as the last flames died down. By morning, the fire had been controlled. 3 homes were lost. No lives. Callie sat on the back steps of the church, a bandage on her arm, her face streaked with soot. Ruth sat beside her, offering a thermos. You're a damn miracle you know that Callie took the coffee. I'm just stubborn. Same thing Ruth said. Caleb limped over Lucy, trailing behind with blankets and juice boxes for the other kids. He sat beside Callie without speaking, just looked at her. Then he took something from his pocket. The ring. She stared at it. I said I wasn't asking for anything before, Caleb said, but now I am. He paused. I'm asking you to build a life with me. Not because you owe me anything, but because I've watched you run into fire, and I don't want to spend one more day without knowing I get to hold your hand when it's over. Callie didn't speak. She reached out slowly and took the ring. That evening, when the town gathered in the church hall to share food and comfort, Lucy stood on a chair and cleared her throat. Everyone says Callie's a miracle, People chuckled. I think she is, too, Lucy said. But I also think maybe she was the prayer, and we were the ones who needed answering. Silence. Then applause. Outside, the stars returned. Smoke lingered, but so did the light. And in the quiet beneath the pines, Caleb pulled Callie close, kissed her soot-streaked forehead and whispered, "You didn't just save me. You saved this whole town." Callie smiled. Maybe she said, "But you're the one who believed in me first." Spring came quietly to Marlow Ridge. There was no grand announcement, just the steady melting of snow, the soft unfurling of wildflowers on the hillside, and the way the sun lingered a little longer each evening. The smell of smoke no longer carried panic, but memory of what was lost, what was saved, and what had begun to bloom from the ashes. Atop the hill, the Granger cabin stood unchanged in form, but not in spirit. The roof had been patched, the porch swing reinforced, and Lucy had painted a wooden sign above the front door with her trademark glitter glue, the Miracle House. It was crooked, it was perfect. Callie woke to the sound of birdsong and the weight of a warm quilt pulled to her chin. Caleb was already up the distant sound of his boots, moving across the wooden floor. She smiled before her eyes even opened. The last few weeks had moved slowly, not in the way of dragging time, but in the way of intention. Caleb was recovering. Lucy was thriving, and Callie, well, she was discovering what it meant to truly live, not just exist. She helped repair fences, planted flowers with Lucy, and started sketching again, at first timidly, then with confidence. Caleb had even cleared a small corner of the shed for her. Your art space, he said, or your thinking spot, or just your place to breathe. She used it for all three. On the first Saturday of May, something quiet and extraordinary happened. They got married. No invitations, no decorations, no aisle. Just the three of them barefoot in the field behind the cabin, the grass still damp with morning dew. Ruth stood as witness. Tom read a verse from a folded piece of paper. Lucy wore a crown of daisies and declared herself flower girl ring-bearer and boss of snacks. Caleb took Callie's hands in his and said, "You were never lost. You were just waiting to be seen." Callie replied, her voice clear and certain, "You didn't just find me. You gave me back to myself." When they kissed, Lucy clapped so hard her flower crown slipped over her eyes. They laughed, and that sound light True shared rose like music into the spring air. Later that evening, as the sun began to dip behind the ridge, the little family gathered by the fire pit. Lucy toasted marshmallows. Caleb leaned back in his chair, his arm draped over Callie's shoulder. She watched the flames, her fingers absently tracing the edge of her wedding band. "You know," she said softly, "if someone had told me a year ago I'd be here, I wouldn't have believed them." Caleb smiled. "I don't think you needed to believe. You just needed someone who did." Callie looked at him, eyes shining in the firelight. "I never knew home could be this quiet, this safe." "You made it that way," he replied. "You breathed life into it." Lucy crawled into Callie's lap with the casual certainty only children possess. "Can we pray?" she asked. Caleb and Callie exchanged a look. "Sure, sweetheart." They bowed their heads. But this time, no one asked for anything. No pleas for healing. No cries for protection. No silent desperation. Just Lucy's small voice saying, "Thank you." Then silence. Then the soft crackle of the fire. As the stars blinked to life overhead, Callie sat still and watched them, her hand resting gently on her daughter's back. Yes, her daughter. She thought about all the places she'd lived, all the nights she'd tried to disappear into floorboards, into shadows, into silence. And now this. Not a mansion, not a castle, but a cabin with a swing and a porch light that never went out. She was not afraid anymore. She was not invisible. She was not broken. She was a wife, a mother, a miracle in motion. That night before she went to sleep, Callie stepped out onto the porch one last time. The wind was soft. The hills were quiet. The whole world seemed to pause, as if acknowledging how far she had come. And in that moment, she whispered into the night, not a prayer, not a hope, just a truth: I am home. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Just drop a comment below and share your city or country. It's always beautiful to see how stories like this connect us, no matter how far apart we may be. And if you enjoy heartfelt stories about love, redemption, and the quiet power of kindness, feel free to subscribe to the channel. It's a gentle way to stay close, and there's always room for one more around the fire. Thank you truly for spending your time here with me. Your presence means more than you know. Until next time, take good care.